It is the second day of May, wishing you all a lovely Thursday morning right here on Community Radio Networks. And we have now all the information you need to take on this second day of May. Stay with us and we'll have it all for you. The financial news, some stories from the annals of history that happened on the 2nd of May, your social calendar. But we'll start first with the world news coming up. This is Community Radio Networks, the world news read by Shabnam Madgil. Police moved into the pro-Palestinian encampment at UCLA this morning where they faced intense resistance and made dozens of arrests. Officers wearing body armor, helmets and face shields methodically pulled apart the barricade as protesters tried to hold together the assemblage of plywood and metal fencing. Flares arced overhead, igniting with piercing blasts, and smoke filled the air from fire extinguishers that demonstrators sprayed at the police. There were several fronts of the operation, with police using flashbang type devices that echoed across campus. Officers managed to remove a row of barriers and began dismantling tests, but it was a slow operation, with officers making some progress and then stopping to regroup. Hundreds of officers were on the scene, but they were outnumbered by the protesters. One flashpoint was Royce Hall, where officers were trying to push protesters out of the landmark building. Earlier in the morning, about 15 LAPD officers entered through a makeshift barricade near the school's Tonga steps around 1:30 a.m. UCLA police repeatedly announced over loudspeakers that protesters should clear the area immediately, and those who failed to do so would be subject to arrest. Students, faculty and staff have erected makeshift camps and demanded an end to Israel's war in the Gaza Strip, and that their universities divest from companies that sell weapons or services to Israel. The demonstration at the UCLA had been relatively mild compared with other campuses here before midnight and all through yesterday. We had massive pro-Palestine protests gripping another university in the U.S. After Columbia University campus, protesters set up Palestine Liberation Zone inside the UT Dallas campus and raised anti-Israel slogans. Police have rushed there to the campus, dismantled the encampments, and arrested at least 20 protesters amid chants and slogans. The University of North Texas in Denton also yesterday joined the growing list of colleges and universities around the country with pro-Palestinian protests on campus, and asked UNT to cut ties with Israeli assets and with weapons manufacturers like Lockheed Martin and Raytheon. The grassy expanse of the University of Queensland Great Court has long been centre of student life at the Australian state's biggest university, and now a gathering point for rival camps pitched around 100 metres from each other, one populated by supporters of the Students for Palestine UQ, and another smaller cluster of tents with the Israeli flag among others strung between trees. And these camps are among protest sites at 7 universities around Australia, from Melbourne and Sydney in the country's southeast to Adelaide in its centre and Perth along the western coast. Israeli fighter jets and artillery hit central Gaza this morning as efforts to reach a new deal between Israel and the Palestinian Islamist Hamas group continue. Israeli Air Force fighter jets struck armed terrorist infrastructure and operational tunnel shafts, according to the IDF, the Israel Defense Forces. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is coming under fierce pressure from far-right members of his government not to agree to the ceasefire proposal currently on the table, which could prevent an Israeli military offensive in Rafah from moving forward. Hamas is considering a new framework for a deal proposed by Egypt that would see as many as 33 Israeli hostages released in exchange for a pause in the hostilities in Gaza that have raged for nearly 7 months. And Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu secured another reprieve in a long-running Israeli dispute over exemptions of ultra-Orthodox Jews from military service, with the Supreme Court deferring the deadline for a new conscription plan. And U.S. Secretary of State Anthony Blinken said he has still not seen a plan for Israel's planned offensive in the southern Gaza city of Rafah that would protect civilians, repeating that Washington could not support such an assault. The two had met in Jerusalem for 2.5 hours, after which Israel repeated that the Rafah operation would go ahead despite the U.S. position and a stark UN warning that it would lead to tragedy. U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken toured a key Gaza border crossing for a first-hand look at aid shipments after calling on Israel to do more to help the territory. He traveled to Kerem Shalom, an Israeli entry point into Gaza a few kilometers from the southern flashpoint city of Rafah, where he saw dozens of trucks waiting to enter, as well as several Israeli military tanks parked nearby. Gaza stands filled with more debris and rubble than Ukraine, according to the United Nations, and the mammoth task of clearing it has been made all the more costly and dangerous in the face of the sheer amount of asbestos and unexploded ordnance. If the Israel-Hamas war stopped today, it would still take until the year 2040 to rebuild all the homes that have been destroyed in nearly 7 months of Israel's bombardment and ground offensives in that territory. Iran's supreme leader, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, has said efforts underway to forge a normalization of ties between Israel and Arab countries will not resolve the crisis in the Middle East. Saudi Arabia had been in talks over a potential normalization with Israel, but they were paused when the Gaza crisis broke out, and regional tensions have meanwhile soared since the start of the Israeli aggression, drawing in Iran-backed groups in Syria, Lebanon, Iraq, and Yemen. Iran has announced sanctions on several American and British individuals and entities for supporting Israel in its offensive against Hamas. And Colombian President Gustavo Petro has said his country will sever diplomatic ties with Israel, whose leader he described as genocidal over its aggression in Gaza. Egypt's top diplomat, Sameh Shoukry, has said in a meeting with his French counterpart that parties must show the necessary flexibility to achieve a truce in Gaza that stops the bloodshed of Palestinians. German Chancellor Olaf Scholz and Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu have discussed the conflict between Israel and Hamas, including a possible ceasefire, in a telephone call. And Palestine's ambassador to the UN, Riyad Mansour, has called on countries that have not recognized Palestine as a state to do so now. The U.S. military has so far constructed over 50% of a maritime pier that will eventually be placed off the coast of Gaza to speed the flow of humanitarian aid into the enclave. And the Biden administration is weighing measures to help Palestinians living in the U.S. who want to bring family from the war-torn region. The U.S. and Saudi Arabia are nearing a historic pact that would offer the kingdom security guarantees and lay out a possible pathway to diplomatic ties with Israel if its government brings the war in Gaza to an end. The U.S. and Saudi Arabia have drafted a set of agreements on security and technology sharing, which are intended to be linked to a broader Middle East settlement involving Israel and Palestinians. President Biden, who heads to Wilmington, North Carolina today to talk about the economy, is detouring to Charlotte to meet with the families of law enforcement officers shot to death on the job just a week after he sat down with the grieving relatives of 2 cops killed in upstate New York. Vice President Kamala Harris traveled to Florida yesterday, just hours after a controversial ban on most abortions after 6 weeks of pregnancy goes into effect in the state as the Biden campaign ratchets up its strategy of blaming former President Trump for abortion restrictions being adopted across the country. And President Biden today will expand the San Gabriel Mountains National Monument by nearly a third in an action that is being widely praised by the indigenous leaders, politicians, conservationists, and community organizers who had long fought for the enlargement of the protected natural area that serves as the backyard of the Los Angeles Basin. He will sign a proclamation expanding the Berryessa Snow Mountain National Monument by adding the 13,696-acre Moloch Luyok, or the Condor Ridge, to the 330,000-acre swath of rolling oak woodlands, lush conifer forests, and dramatic rock formations along Northern California's inner Coast Range. 26 Republican attorneys general filed lawsuits challenging a new Biden administration rule requiring firearms dealers across the United States to run background checks on buyers at gun shows and other places outside brick and mortar stores. The lawsuits filed in federal court in Arkansas, Florida, and Texas are seeking to block enforcement of the rule announced last month, which aims to close a loophole that has allowed tens of thousands of guns to be sold every year by unlicensed dealers who do not perform background checks to ensure the potential buyer is not legally prohibited from having a firearm. GOP Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene announced she will force a vote over House Speaker Mike Johnson's ouster next week, a move that comes after Democrats have said they will vote to kill the effort and ensure Johnson doesn't lose his job. The Arizona Senate voted to repeal the state's 160-year-old near-total abortion ban 3 weeks after the state Supreme Court revived the law and thrust reproductive rights into the political spotlight. And a group of demonstrators held a protest outside Dallas City Hall yesterday, asking council members to pass a resolution saying the city would not enforce the Texas immigration law known as SB 4, and the group held the rally before the city council meeting started. We are getting reports of 2 earthquakes that were centered in Johnson County in North Texas and felt as far away as Mansfield. The U.S. Geological Survey says the quake struck at 1:03 p.m. and 1:09 p.m. yesterday, centered near the Johnson County town of Lillian, but felt by many people in nearby Mansfield, which is about 5 miles southwest. The Department of Homeland Security documents shared by the House Committee on Homeland Security this week indicate that most of the people who have come into the U.S. through a program launched last year have arrived in one state. More than 150,000 Cubans, Haitians, Nicaraguans, and Venezuelans have been flown into Miami and Fort Lauderdale in Florida. And the documents obtained through this subpoena identified 50 airports where 400,000 were processed into the country. And the committee characterized these people as inadmissible aliens and the program as an unlawful parole program. Robert F. Kennedy Jr.'s increasingly frequent appearances on conservative media platforms are beginning to raise alarms at Mar-a-Lago. It's another sign of the rising threat that Kennedy, the independent presidential candidate, poses to Trump. Former President Trump returned to the campaign trail for the first time yesterday since his New York criminal hush money trial began in earnest last month, and spent one allotted weekday out of the courtroom hosting rallies in Wisconsin and Michigan, 2 critical battleground states he won in 2016 but lost to Joe Biden in 2020. Former President Trump acknowledged that he told the Secret Service he wanted to go to the U.S. Capitol on the 6th of January in 2021, depicting a different tone of an event that became a contentious detail of a former White House aide's testimony before the House committee that investigated the attack. In remarks at a campaign rally yesterday in Wisconsin, he blasted the account of Cassidy Hutchinson, a former top aide to ex-White House Chief of Staff Mark Meadows. Hutchinson was a key witness during closely watched committee hearings in 2022. Former Hollywood producer Harvey Weinstein will be retired in New York, according to the Manhattan District Attorney's Office yesterday, a week after the state's highest court overturned his 2020 rape conviction. He appeared in court in a wheelchair and a black suit over 4 years since his conviction was celebrated as a landmark for the Me Too movement, where women accused hundreds of men in entertainment, media, politics, and other sectors of sexual misconduct. The 72-year-old has been serving a 23-year sentence in a prison in upstate Rome, New York. Following last week's order, he was transferred to Bellevue Hospital in Manhattan, and he was back in custody and expressed his intention to hold a new trial after the Labor Day holiday. He remained silent during the court hearing, and his attorney did not object to his client being remanded. A senior Defense Department official told lawmakers that Russia is developing an indiscriminate anti-satellite nuclear device that would pose a threat to all satellites operated by countries and companies around the world. An exhibition of Western military equipment captured from Kyiv forces during the fighting in Ukraine opened in the Russian capital of Moscow. The exhibit, organized by the Russian Defense Ministry, features more than 30 pieces of Western-made heavy equipment, including a U.S.-made M1 Abrams battle tank and a Bradley armored fighting vehicle, a Leopard 2 tank and a Marder armored infantry vehicle from Germany, and a French-made AMX-10 RC armored vehicle. And the exhibition, which will remain open for a month at a World War II memorial venue in western Moscow, also displays firearms, military papers, and other documents. As many as 1 million Russians that fled abroad in the first year of the Kremlin's invasion of Ukraine, and now thousands are returning home, delivering a propaganda victory to President Putin and a boost to his war economy. Crunch elections in Catalonia next week will test the wisdom of the latest political gambles by Spain's Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez, who aims to use the vote to buoy his power nationally, but risks inadvertently awakening a dormant Catalan separatism. Germany and Poland stage festivities in twin towns on their shared border to mark the 20th anniversary of Poland's accession to the European Union. German Foreign Minister and the Polish Foreign Minister met in Frankfurt and Oder and Slubice, and the two visited the Collegium Polonicum academic institution on the Polish side, and then joined the festival and crossed the Oder Bridge to Frankfurt and Der Oder in Germany. Thousands of people took part in left-wing demonstrations to mark International Workers' Day or Labor Day in Berlin, Hamburg, and other German cities yesterday. And Germany's foreign minister set off on a week-long trip to Australia, New Zealand, and Fiji, where the focus will be on security policy and climate protection. And while we are talking about climate, the United Arab Emirates is currently facing extreme weather conditions, which has led to the issuance of an orange alert. Intense rainfall and thunderstorms have covered the area, causing disruptions to daily life and necessitating various precautionary actions. Today, the unstable weather peaked and residents were instructed to remain indoors. Remote work was implemented in both public and private sectors. Educational institutions transitioned to distance learning to prioritize student safety. Additionally, parks and beaches, public recreational areas closed to avoid accidents during the severe weather, and many flights have been cancelled. A senior Islamic State group commander wanted in connection with one of the deadliest attacks on U.S. forces in Africa was killed in an operation by Mali's security forces. Abu Huzaifa, known by the alias Higo, was a commander in the group known as the Islamic State in the Greater Sahara, and the State Department had announced a reward of up to $5 million for information about him. He is believed to have helped carry out the 2017 assault on U.S. and Nigerian forces in Tonga, Niger. 4 Americans and 4 Nigerian soldiers were killed there. And renewed eruptions from a remote Indonesian volcano have triggered fresh evacuation orders and sparked flight cancellations and airport closures this week, with smoke, lava, and volcanic gases spewing out of the fiery mountain. Mount Ruang, a 725-meter volcano on Ruang Island of North Sulawesi, has been erupting in spectacular fashion on and off since the middle of last month, posing a growing threat to those living nearby and to air traffic in the region. And the latest eruptions have also forced closures of at least 7 airports in the vicinity, including the Sam Ratulangi International Airport that serves the city of Manado, capital of North Sulawesi province and a well-known scuba diving destination. You're listening to the World News on Community Radio Networks. The death toll from that collapsed highway in southeastern China has climbed to 48 this morning as searchers dug for a second day through a treacherous and mountainous area. And the United States has imposed sanctions on more than a dozen companies in China and Hong Kong for their support of Russia's war in Ukraine as part of a tranche of nearly 300 new sanctions unveiled yesterday. Americans are increasingly concerned about China's power abroad and want to combat that influence. This according to a new poll by the Pew Research Center. 42% of respondents indicated that they consider China an enemy of the United States, up from 34% in 2021 when the Washington-based research organization began asking questions. President Biden said that India, China, Russia, and Japan are struggling on the economic front because they're xenophobic and don't want immigrants. Why is China stalling so badly economically? Why is Japan having trouble? Why is Russia? Why is India? Because they're xenophobic. They don't want immigrants. Immigrants are what makes us strong, he said. He was speaking at a fundraising event in Washington for re-election and attributed immigration as the reason behind U.S.'s economic growth. India has backed Palestine's bid for full membership in the UN, which was rejected by the U.S. last month, will be revisited, and its efforts to join the global organization will be supported. Aam Aadmi Party's Raghav Chadda undergoing vitrectomy in London to prevent retinal detachment in his eye. He will undergo this surgery in the UK to prevent the eye's retinal detachment. His condition was serious and there was a possibility of blindness. As soon as he gets better, he will come back to India and join the elections. With just a day left for filing of nominations for Phase 5 of the Lok Sabha elections, the suspense continued over the Congress candidates for the Amethi and Raebareli constituencies in Uttar Pradesh, once considered a stronghold of the Nehru-Gandhi family. Congress leader Rahul Gandhi is already on the Congress ticket from Wayanad in Kerala, which polled in the second phase on the 26th of last month, is likely to put himself in the fray from Amethi as well. Meanwhile, the Election Commission reviewed the preparedness for the third phase of Lok Sabha elections, scheduled on the 7th of this month, and released the final voter turnout figures for the first and second phases at 66.1% and 66.7% respectively. We do have Congress leader Rahul Gandhi alleging that Hassan MP Prajwal Revanna had raped 400 women and made their videos and sought an apology from Prime Minister Modi for soliciting votes for him. Addressing an election rally, he targeted Modi and said he should apologize to the women of India for seeking votes for the mass rapist. A special investigation team this morning issued a lookout notice for the suspended functionary and Hassan MP Prajwal Revanna, the grandson of ex-PM H.D. Devagowda, who is embroiled in an alleged sex video case. He, along with his father, has been summoned to appear for questioning. There they go again, the Gowdas, Karnataka's once premier political party, back in the news for the wrong reasons. Comedian Shyam Rangila is all set to contest against Prime Minister Modi from Varanasi's Lok Sabha constituency in the upcoming parliamentary elections. Expressing gratitude towards his supporters, the artist, who shot to fame for mimicking Prime Minister Modi, said, "I'm excited by the love I'm receiving from all of you," after announcing that I'm contesting elections from Varanasi. The decision of Amritpal Singh, the incarcerated president of Waris Punjab De, to run for Lok Sabha election from the Khadur Sahib parliamentary constituency has not only attracted the attention of everyone to this panthic stronghold, but has also sparked concerns within the Shiromani Akali Dal about potential erosion of their voter base. The Supreme Court in New Delhi today heard preliminary objection raised by the centre regarding a lawsuit filed by the West Bengal government, where the state has alleged that the CBI has been proceeding with investigations and filing FIRs in several cases, despite West Bengal having withdrawn its general consent for the federal agency to operate within its jurisdiction. A day after around 200 schools received hoax bomb emails, educational institutions in the city experienced a slightly lower attendance today, and principals reviewed evacuation plans for future emergency. It was yesterday that approximately 200 schools in the Delhi NCR received this hoax bomb threat via email, causing panic among parents and students and leading authorities to suspend classes and request parents to pick up their children. As vast swaths of east and south India continue to bake under the scorching sun today, with the mercury in 2 Telangana districts hitting the 44 degrees mark. There is a top scientist with the Indian Meteorological Department who held out no hope for an immediate respite for the state, adding that the maximum temperature can reach up to 45 degrees centigrade over the next few days. BCCI's Ajit Agarkar-led National Selection Committee went largely with tried and tested choices while announcing the Indian team yesterday for the upcoming T20 World Cup in the US and Caribbean in June. A press conference on the squad selection will be held in Mumbai today, as Agarkar and Indian skipper Rohit Sharma address the media and take questions. And in the eagerly debated wicketkeeper batter slot, both Rishabh Pant and Sanju Samson have made it to the squad of 15. The informed Shivam Dubey, who has been in sizzling form with the bat for Chennai Super Kings in the middle overs, has also been picked. And leg spinner Yuzvendra Chahal also made a comeback on the basis of his recent IPL performance. Rohit Sharma, as expected, leads the team, while Hardik Pandya has been named his deputy, and it is understood that the selectors wanted more attacking options in the middle overs, meaning there was no place for the seasoned KL Rahul. And one surprise omission is that of Rinku Singh, arguably India's best finisher in the format over the past year. He only finds a mention in the list of reserves, which also includes Shubman Gill and backup pacers Avish Khan and Khalil Ahmed. Next month's T20 World Cup will help build cricket's profile and popularity in the US ahead of its appearance at the 2028 Olympics in Los Angeles, according to the sports world body. And this showpiece 20-over event event will be co-hosted by the West Indies and the United States in June, with New York, Florida and Dallas as the venues in the USA. Pakistan Cricket Board Chairman Mohsin Naqvi is confident that 8 out of 8 teams will visit the country when it hosts the ICC Champions Trophy early next year. And beside his optimism, whether India will make a trip across the border for the tournament stays a question mark nevertheless, given the country's government's reluctance to send its cricket team to Pakistan due to sour political relations with its neighbors. And Pakistan today has recalled fast bowler Haris Rauf and medium pacer Hassan Ali for the T20 internationals in Ireland and England later this month, their final warm-ups for the World Cup. Two players who did not make the cut were wrist spinners Usama Mir and fast bowler Zaman Khan, both of whom played against New Zealand in the recent T20I series. We do have the newly appointed 7-member Women's National Selection Committee naming a 17-player Pakistan women's squad for this month's tour to England, and Nida Dar will continue to lead the side, which will feature in 3 2020 internationals from the 11th to the 19th of May and 3 one-dayers from the 23rd to the 29th of May. The Institute of Space Technology has said Pakistan's historic lunar mission iCube-Q will be launched tomorrow on board China's Chang'e 6 lunar probe from Hainan, China. According to the Institute of Space Technology, the satellite iCube-Q has been designed and developed by IST in collaboration with China's Shanghai University and Pakistan's National Space Agency, SUPARCO. Chief of Army Staff General Asim Munir today said that the military was well aware of its constitutional limits and expected others to uphold the Constitution. He was addressing the passing out parade of cadets of the Pakistan Air Force Asghar Khan Academy in Risalpur as the chief guest. A full court meeting of Peshawar High Court has proposed enactments of law by federal government for stipulating the respective mandate of intelligence agencies so as to protect judges of superior courts from harassment and intimidation. PMLN Punjab President Rana Sanaullah stressed the need for seriousness from the PTI on holding a political dialogue, highlighting its conflicting statements. The government postgraduate college has formally directed its girl students not to take part in political gatherings, birthday parties and other extracurricular activities on the way to the campus and returning home. The directions issued by the college's chief proctor were circulated and asking the parents to stay in contact with the administration to help improve academic standards. Several unpleasant incidents were reported at some colleges with co-education, so the college took this initiative to prevent them. Ladies and gentlemen, that's all I have in the world news for you today, but I do have your financial news coming up in a separate segment right here on Community Radio Network. Stay with us, and we will be right back. Give me a minute.
नमस्कार, मैं दिव्यांश श्रीवास्तव। आपको महाशिवरात्रि की हार्दिक शुभकामनाएं। अगर आपको ये वीडियो अच्छा लगे तो
Financial news that we always start with the foreign currency exchange rates. We have the Indian rupee at 83.47, the Pakistani rupee at 278.35, Bangladeshi taka at 109.77, the Sri Lankan rupee at 297.16, and the Nepalese rupee at 133.62. The British pound is at 0.80, the euro at 0.94, the Canadian dollar 1.37, and the Australian dollar 1.53. Mexican peso 16.92, Chinese yuan 7.24, Japanese yen 154.64, the Russian ruble at 91.67, Thai baht 36.99, and Turkish lira 32.37. The global economy is growing faster than expected only a few months ago thanks to resilient U.S. activity, while inflation is converging more quickly than expected with central banks' targets. The global economy would maintain the 3.1% growth rate seen last year and pick up marginally to 3.2% next year. The Federal Reserve kept interest rates unchanged yesterday, holding the Fed funds rate at a 23-year high between 5.25% and 5.50% amid a lack of further progress, bringing inflation back to its 2% target. And while introducing a tougher assessment on inflation, Fed Chair Jeremy Powell left little doubt during a press conference about the Fed's most likely next move. The Federal Reserve is still in a holding pattern. In their meeting yesterday, Fed officials again held interest rates unchanged. And now most Wall Street futures traders aren't looking for a possible rate cut until November. And even then, the bets are nearly a toss-up. The U.S. is not suffering from stagflation and is growing well despite stubborn inflation, said the Federal Reserve Chairman Jeremy Powell last night, dismissing suggestions that the U.S. was close to an economic trap of stagnant growth and rampant inflation, saying the economy was among the best in the world and the rate of price rises was on track to fall to the Fed's 2% target. Traders on Wall Street cheered when he signaled he didn't see oncoming interest rate hikes despite inflationary pressures. But the celebration didn't last long. For a brief period, U.S. stocks popped to unleash the biggest post-policy meeting rally since December, while Treasury yields tumbled more than 10 basis points across maturities. The relief trade kicked in when he told reporters it is unlikely that the next rate move will be a hike. Intercontinental Exchange reported a rise in adjusted profit for the first quarter this morning as volumes hit a record on surge in energy markets trading. U.S. jobs opening have slid last month to the lowest level in more than 3 years, but stayed at historically high levels in a sign that the job market remains resilient in the face of higher interest rates. And the Labor Department reported that employers posted 8.5 million vacancies last month, down from 8.8 in February. And the number of Americans quitting their jobs fell to the lowest level since January 2021, a sign of diminishing confidence in their ability to find something better, but layoffs fell. The Biden administration said it has approved the cancellation of more than $6.1 billion in student loan debt held by 317,000 borrowers who previously attended the Art Institutes, a now defunct network of for-profit colleges. Oil prices have risen today, rebounding from 3 days of losses that took prices to their lowest since mid-March. Brent crude futures for July gained 79 cents or 0.95% to 84.23 a barrel. And U.S. stock futures advanced as traders took comfort from the Federal Reserve's signal that there's no plan to raise interest rates and looked ahead to Apple Inc.'s upcoming earnings. S&P 500 contracts climbed 0.7%, with Apple, Amazon.com Inc. and Nvidia Corporation posting small gains in pre-market trading. Apple will report its second quarter earnings after the bell today, as Wall Street braces for what has the potential to be a sizable drop in iPhone sales out of China. iPhone sales fell 19% in the quarter, while rival Huawei continued to regain its footing after the U.S. attempted to kneecap the company to keeping it from accessing U.S. chips in 2019. Qualcomm shares rose 4% in pre-market trading today after the smartphone-focused chipmaker signaled an AI-fueled rebound in demand, especially in China after a 2-year slump. Moderna reported quarterly revenue today that beat Wall Street estimates but came in dramatically lower than the previous year when demand for COVID-19 vaccines was higher. Sales of Moderna's COVID-19 shot Spikevax, its only marketed product, dropped 91% from the previous year to $167 million for the quarter, but surpassed analysts' expectations of $97.5 million. Health insurer Cigna Group raised its annual profit forecast today as lower than expected medical costs and strength in its pharmacy benefit management unit there helped it beat first quarter earnings estimates. And Johnson & Johnson has proposed a $6.475 billion settlement that offer for tens of thousands of lawsuits that allege the company's talc-based baby powder caused ovarian cancer. Johnson & Johnson stopped selling that talc-based baby powder in the U.S. in 2020, globally in last year, in the wake of what it called misinformation about the product's safety amid a barrage of legal challenges, more than 50,000 lawsuits to be exact. The FTC is attacking patents for 20 brand-name drugs, which include Novo Nordisk Ozempic, as well as its Saxenda and Victoza. In total, letters were issued to 10 different companies warning them that certain drug patents were not properly listed. Among the other companies are AstraZeneca, Boehringer Ingelheim, Covis Pharma, GlaxoSmithKline, Novartis, Teva Pharmaceuticals, and Amphastar Pharmaceuticals. A majority of the drug patients are for type 2 diabetes, but there are some asthma and inhalers included in the patents that the FTC is challenging. Freshworks shares plunged nearly 30% in pre-market trading today after the CRM software maker cut its full-year revenue forecast and named a new CEO. Quanta Services raised its annual revenue and profit forecast today, encouraged by strong demand for its construction and engineering services from the renewable energy and electric power industries. And Appian Corporation reported a loss of $32.9 million in its first quarter. Aptiv plc will reduce equity interest in its self-driving joint venture Motional with Hyundai Motor, according to the auto parts supplier. Aptiv will not be required to fund the joint venture in the future, while Hyundai will provide additional funding. Walmart is moving forward with a new brand that it hopes will attract the attention of younger customers who are not brand loyal and want to branch out to affordable gourmet foods. The company shared that its new brand, labeled Better Goods, was being rolled out nationwide with the 300 new products, marking the largest private brand food launch in 2 decades. Walmart shared that the items will range in price from $2 to $15, with most of them coming in around $5. Among them will be premium bronze-cut pasta from Italy, plant-based mozzarella, oat milk, non-dairy frozen desserts, and various seasonings. It is Kirti Kalyanam, a professor and executive director of the Retail Management Institute at Santa Clara University's Levy School of Business, who says that the move from Walmart comes as prices continue to push away consumers. Universal Music Group and TikTok have said this morning they reached a new licensing agreement that will restore the label's songs and artists to the social media platform, as well as give musicians more protections from AI. TikTok began removing Universal's content from its app after their licensing deal expired in January, and the two sides failed to reach agreement on royalties. And we have a group of workers at Alphabet Inc.'s Google who have filed a complaint with the U.S. Labor Board claiming the tech company unlawfully fired 50 employees for protesting its cloud contract with the Israeli government. And this single-page complaint that was filed with the U.S. National Labor Relations Board alleges that by firing the workers, Google interfered with their rights under U.S. labor law to advocate for better working conditions. Cocoa prices have slumped again, extending a week of extreme volatility as liquidity dries up and buyers hold back from purchasing beans. Former President George W. Bush is receiving a rare honor as his latest series of paintings will be put on exhibit at the Disney World in Orlando, Florida, featuring his portraits of courage, a commander's tribute to America's warriors, which contains more than 60 paintings that he completed depicting service members and veterans who have served our nation with honor since 9/11 and whom the president has come to know personally since leaving office. The theme park announced that the paintings will be placed in Epcot, one of the resort's theme parks, and will be on display at the American Adventure Pavilion starting the 9th of next month. And each piece of artwork will also include a story written by the 77-year-old former President George W. Bush about the veteran or the service member in that artwork. Miami Dolphins owner Stephen Ross and CEO Tom Garfinkel will host their third Formula One Miami Grand Prix, knowing their courageous venture into one of the world's fastest growing sports has elevated their NFL business. Recently entertained a stunning $10 billion offer for control of the Dolphins' Hard Rock Stadium and F1 Miami race, which nearly matches the combined record-setting sales of the Denver Broncos and Washington Commanders. Two people with direct knowledge of the situation reporting this. Mike Tyson's fight against Jake Paul in Texas this summer has been sanctioned as a competitive boxing match rather than an exhibition, and the rounds will be shorter and the gloves will be heavier. The Texas Department of Licensing and Regulation approved terms for the July 20th flight at the AT&T Stadium in Arlington, and Netflix will provide live coverage of the bout between the 27-year-old Jake Paul, a social media star turned boxer, and 57-year-old Mike Tyson, who hasn't fought since an exhibition against Roy Jones Jr. in November of 2020. Nearly 40% of Texas businesses surveyed by the Dallas Federal Reserve Bank last month were already using artificial intelligence. An additional 16% plan to use it within the next 12 months. This focused around 400 Texas firms. More than 10 weeks after going on strike, Fort Worth Molson Coors workers are still off the job and are spending this International Workers' Day yesterday on the picket line. May Day, observed as blue-collar workers around the world as the day to celebrate the working class, but it's been a tough 10 weeks for the workers at the Molson Coors plant, where they went on strike on the 17th of February. Unruly behavior on airplanes can lead to hefty fines for passengers. Ask Alexander Michael Dominic MacDonald from Chelmsford, England, who this week was ordered to pay $20,638 to United Airlines for his outburst on a flight from London to Newark, New Jersey. The incident kicked off when the 30-year-old was having a loud argument with his girlfriend. The situation soon escalated and he started yelling at a flight attendant. He was both verbally and physically aggressive. And when the flight attendants asked him to be quiet and attempted to calm him, he became belligerent, threatening, and intimidating towards them. He also told the cabin crew lead that he would mess up the plane. McDonald was eventually restrained with flex cuffs, and the flight, with 160 people on board, was diverted to Maine. He pleaded guilty to one count of interfering with the flight crew and was also sentenced to time already served. Bad behavior on flights surging during the pandemic, with tensions running high among passengers and flight crew over issues like mask wearing. We do have Air Canada reporting a smaller first quarter adjusted loss today as Canada's largest carrier benefited from a rebound in bookings for business travel. Major North American carriers are cashing in on a resurgence in big spending by corporate customers who have been largely absent from the post-pandemic travel boom. Air Canada has been forced to apologize to an Indigenous chief after cabin crew tried to take her sacred headdress and put it in the cargo hold on a domestic flight last week. The newly elected national chief of the Assembly of First Nations said she was stunned when crew members attempted to take the sacred item from her on a flight between Montreal and Fredericton, with the case she was carrying the headdress in being thrown into the hold. She had traveled before without any issue, carrying the headdress in a special case alongside her carry-on luggage, but this time staff took a different view. She told the outlet that the situation got pretty heated, with staff pulling the case from her when she asked to keep it under the seat in front of her. European Union Chief Ursula von der Leyen today announced $1 billion in aid for Lebanon during a visit to the crisis-hit country and urged it to tackle illegal migration to the bloc. The European Union has already agreed deals with Egypt, Tunisia, Mauritania and other countries meant to help stem flows of irregular migrants. British energy major Shell today said net profit dropped 15.5% to $7.4 billion in the first quarter from a year earlier, and the London-listed giant added in a statement that group turnover slid 16% to $74.7 billion in the quarter. Sportswear brands including Nike, Adidas and New Balance led the way with consumers in China during last year, while demand for Japanese casual wear brand Uniqlo was also strong. It is 1,000 respondents that said that 46.2% of consumers purchased from Nike during 2023. A recent Reuters ISPOS poll has highlighted a growing perception among Americans that TikTok is being used by China to manipulate U.S. public opinion. 58% of respondents believe that the Chinese government uses the popular short video app to influence American views, while only 13% disagreed with this. The number of Indians seeking opportunities abroad have marked a dip last year. According to a recent study, the number of Indians who are willing to work abroad have declined from 78% in 2020 to 54% in 2023. Telecom equipment manufacturing and exports are becoming a new success story following the success of smartphone exports. And in this financial year, the telecom equipment production exceeded the milestone of 45,000 crore rupees, with exports totaling approximately 10,500 crore rupees. Many companies are planning to launch a wave of IPOs this month, ignoring the usual worries about market instability during the season. Firms like Indegene, Aadhaar Housing Finance, TBO Tech, Go Digit, Office Space Solutions and Chronox aim to raise over 10,000 crore rupees through IPOs this month. 24 companies have already raised about 18,000 crore rupees from IPOs so far this year. The Aadhaar Housing Finance, backed by Blackstone, is launching an IPO worth 3,000 crore rupees, and you can subscribe from the 8th of May. Micron India is aiming to release the initial set of chips packaged at its Sanand facility in Gujarat by the beginning of next year, and the majority of these semiconductor chips will be designated for export, according to the company's India Managing Director Anand Ramamurthy. And Avada Energy today said it had secured 1,190 crore rupee loan for a new solar project in Gujarat from the State Bank of India. Adani Ports and Special Economic Zone has reported a 77% year-on-year jump in its consolidated net profit. And it is Rakesh Singh who has been appointed as the new CEO of Paytm Money, the wealth management platform of 197 Communications Limited, replacing Varun Sridhar. He previously served as the CEO of broking services at Fisdom, a company backed by PayU, said to have joined Paytm Money last month. And Lieutenant Governor V.K. Saxena ordered the immediate termination of 223 employees from the Delhi Commission for Women today. These were allegedly appointed by the former chairperson Swati Maliwal. And the directive from the Lieutenant Governor's office, which referenced the Delhi Commission for Women Act, asserted that the commission is authorized to have 40 staff members. From the musical maestro Ilaiyaraaja sending a legal notice to Rajnikant's Coolie team, to the makers of Manjumal Boys announcing the OTT streaming date for the survival thriller, there are some top trending entertainment stories from the South film industry this week. Music composer Ilaiyaraaja has issued a copyright notice to the producers of the film Coolie for featuring his music in the movie's teaser without obtaining proper authorization. The teaser, which was recently released, has sparked controversy due to its unauthorized use of Ilaiyaraaja's music. Composed by Anuruddh, a snippet of Ilaiyaraaja's song Va Va Pakkam Va from the film Thangamangam has been recreated without obtaining permission from the veteran composer. And director S.S. Rajamouli surprised fans yesterday by unveiling a new project set in the beloved Bahubali universe, Bahubali, Crown of Blood, an animated series. The announcement came through a captivating video shared on social media platforms featuring the title emerging amid surging smoke, accompanied by chants of Bahubali. The eagerly awaited action thriller Pushpa 2, The Rule, directed by Sukumar and featuring Allu Arjun, has been highly anticipated by fans for quite some time. Delivering on their promise, the filmmakers unveiled the first song from the movie titled Pushpa Pushpa, and the track is getting mixed responses from the audience. And the widely praised film Manjumal Boys, starring Sobin Shahir, is all set for its eagerly awaited OTT debut on the 5th of this month. And the news arrives directly from the film's production team, who have officially declared that Manjumal Boys will be available for streaming on Disney Plus Hotstar starting the 5th of this month. While local refineries and oil marketing companies complain about falling capacity utilization and sales, around 10 million liters of Iranian petrol and diesel are smuggled into Pakistan every day through land and sea routes, causing a more than 227 billion rupee annual revenue loss. And we do have many stations that are selling this. Precise information about the informal border crossing and routes for trafficking smuggled items throughout Pakistan is not available, but of the 533 petrol stations, an overwhelming majority, 348, are located in Punjab, as deep as Lahore, Faisalabad, Jung and Attak, pointing out the veracity of this menace. And another 116 outlets selling low-quality smuggled products are based in Balochistan, 38 in Sindh to the extent of Karachi, and another 31 in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa. The government in Karachi borrowed a record amount from banks at record high prices, which ate up 76% of the tax revenue during the first 9 months of the current fiscal year. And Pakistan's consumer price inflation slowed to 17.3% last month from a year earlier. After an unsuccessful voluntary registration push for the Tajir Dost scheme, the Federal Board of Revenue has proposed increasing withholding tax on supplies to non-filer wholesalers and traders. The Federal Board of Revenue's decision to block the mobile phone SIMs of non-filers has generated a new controversy, as the telecom regulator is reluctant to comply with the directives amid pressure from the telcos. Ladies and gentlemen, that's all what I have in the financial news for you, and I hope you found it very, very informative. I do have the final segment of our program coming up for you right here on Community Radio Network. Stay with us. Back in a minute.
कहते
This is the final segment of our program for the second day of May. And before we go forward with it, I would like to thank all the supporters of Community Radio Networks. Huge thanks going out to Discount Power. And you can get more details about Discount Power's commercial as well as residential power at discountpowertx.com. Houston EB5, to find out more about their other projects, you can go on to houstoneb5.com. The Ahluwalia Law Offices, it is ahluwalialaw.com for your information and more details about your legal case. Also, the Wyndham Hotel in Irving, located on Airport Freeway, and they have the most beautiful banquet halls also. Digital X-Force, located in South Lake. Also, Kinsa Law for your next immigration case at kinsalaw.com. We have huge thanks going out to the Michaelachi restaurant in Plano and their new Ruchi Palace by Michaelachi in Carrollton. Also to Sri Vimal in Irving on 183 and MacArthur, as well as their Vimal's venue next door. And big thanks going out to Eggholic on MacArthur Avenue in Irving, as well as to Mystic Mandala and Flash Brush Productions. Thank you very much for your support of Community Radio Networks. The Shruti Sangeet Academy, Indian classical vocal lessons held out there by certified classical vocalist and talk show host Shanta Mishra. You can explore the soul of Indian music. They offer comprehensive curriculums, personalized instructions, and an immersion in bhajan slokas and folk music. Private and group lessons are available on the weekends in East Plano. And for more details, you can reach out to Shanta Mishra at 612-562-4432. We also have an organization we want you to know about, and it is called Color Me Safe, a family crisis management organization serving the greater Dallas area, and they've launched 2 new educational initiatives. The first one is Ask Auntie and the Sathi support group. Through discussion on topics such as generational and cultural gaps, cultural identity, mental health, bullying, and many more, these programs seek to empower South Asian children and families with the tools and understanding to overcome these shared challenges in a supportive and non-judgmental space. And for more information, you can contact colormesafefoundation.org. You all do know that Election Day is coming up this Saturday, so just a reminder out there for that. DFW Gujarati Samaj is presenting a non-stop comedy drama with renowned artist Sri Sanjay Goradia this Sunday, the 5th of May at 5 o'clock at the McKinney North High School. And the DFW Gujarati Samaj encourages you to buy your tickets for this non-stop comedy drama with Sri Sanjay Goradia this Sunday, the 5th of May at 5 o'clock at the McKinney North High School, and there will be light refreshments available for purchase. Hassan Sumro, in association with the Sheesh Eatery and Lounge, presents Moms and Momo, celebrating moms in a fun-filled contest hosted by the one and only Hina Dilpazir Khan. This is happening on Thursday, the 9th of May at 7:30, and your tickets are available at Eventbrite. And for more information, you can contact Hassan Sumro at 972-333-4801. There will be contests there for categories as the most inspirational mom, also best hairstyle, super mom, juggling it all, best mother figure, funniest mom moment, best dressed mom, most melodious mom, and mompreneur, balancing business and family, the most stylish mom, as well as the best grandma. The other events happening in town is the Intense Tour of the Indian Idols, and that's happening on Friday, the 10th of May at 7 o'clock at the Grand Center in Plano. And on Saturday, the 11th of May at 6 o'clock at the Plaza Theatre in Garland, an evening of ghazals and geets by Radhika Chopra. Please call this number for more information on this event. For those of you that love ghazals and geets, the number is 408-412-1238, 408-412-1238. Unforgettable 90s with Kumar Shanu and Sadhana Sargam. And that is coming up on Sunday, the 12th of May at the Credit Union of Texas Event Center in Allen. And that is on Sunday, the 12th of May, 6:30 onwards. Kumar Shanu and Sadhana Sargam live for you. And we do hope that you will be there to see that. Junoon Show is showing on the 19th of May, and that is happening at the Raleigh Underground. The U.S.-India Chamber of Commerce is presenting AICon 2024, incorporating new tech and artificial intelligence. It will be from 9:30 to 2:30 on the 23rd of May at the Renaissance Hotel in Addison. And the morning keynote speaker is Chakri Gautamakulla, the CEO and co-founder of O9 Solutions. And afternoon keynote is George Baker Sr., the founder and chairman of Park Hub. For more information and to register for this event on the 23rd of this month, please go to the Chamber's website, usicoc.org. The Taste of Cowboys 20th anniversary Taste of the Cowboys will be on Friday the 7th of June at the Ford Center at the Star in Frisco. And the BAPS charity is extending a warm invitation to you as esteemed members there of the community in the Joy of Others Walk Run, hosted by BAPS Charities. And with an anticipated participation of over 2,000 walkers, this event promises to be a remarkable display of community spirit and altruism. In the Joy of Others Walk Run by the BAPS Charities on Saturday, the 8th of June at 8 o'clock in the morning, and that is at 3111 Olympus Boulevard. There is a 2-day holistic festival of life and wellness happening at the Plano Nature and Retreat Center by Mystic Mandala. And this will be on Saturday and Sunday, 8th and 9th of June. And for more information for booths and registration, please call Vijay. His number is 972-750-1419. Badshah's Pagal Tour is happening in Dallas at the Curtis Culwell Center. And for more information, you can go to 360shows.com. It's happening on Friday, the 14th of June at the Curtis Culwell Center. And at the Curtis Culwell Center, Shreya Ghoshal will be live on Sunday, the 16th of June. Kal Ho Na Ho, Shankar Ehsaan Loy, live in concert on Saturday, the 29th of June at the Toyota Music Factory on Las Colinas Boulevard. For more information, you can call Andy Lalani, and his number is 817-883-3333. 24/7 entertainment bringing you Shankar Ehsaan Loy live in concert. Nan's Vision brings you a glamorous night with Shilpa Shetty on the 29th of June at the Grandian event venue. So these are some of the events that are happening here in town, and as we have information on more of them, we'll get them to you right here on Community Radio Networks. Let's get you some stories from the annals of history that happened on today's date, which is the 2nd of May. King Charles II of England grants a permanent charter to the Hudson Bay Company, made up of the group of French explorers who opened the lucrative North American fur trade to London merchants. And the charter conferred on them not only a trading monopoly, but also effective control over the vast region surrounding North America's Hudson Bay. Happened on today's date in 1670. And in 1885, Good Housekeeping magazine debuts in Massachusetts with this bold stated mission: to produce and perpetuate perfection, or as near unto perfection as may be attained in the household. And an American institution begins with a place in the Smithsonian National Postal Museum. From its beginning until 1900, Good Housekeeping published many articles about food safety and food adulteration, including an article about candy being contaminated with pulverized asbestos and other toxic substances. And towards the turn of the century, the magazine took on a more active role in calling the government to action for food safety. And that was the Good Housekeeping magazine that debuted on today's date, the 2nd of May in 1885. And to this day, readers look to this iconic Good Housekeeping seal as a credible endorsement of a product's quality. They have a staff of chemists, biologists, nutritionists, and other professionals working in the lab of the Good Housekeeping Institute at the Hearst Tower in New York City. Publishing giant Hearst purchased Good Housekeeping in 1911, and the magazine has nearly 17 million readers of the print and digital edition, more than 45 million website readers, and almost 7 million social media followers. On the 2nd of May in 1918, General Motors Corporation, which which will become the world's largest automotive firm, acquires Chevrolet Motor Company. GM had been founded a decade earlier by Billy Durant, a former carriage maker from Flint, Michigan, whose Durant-Dort Carriage Company had taken control of the ailing Buick Motor Company and incorporated Buick into a new entity, General Motors, which by the end of that decade had welcomed other leading auto manufacturers, including Oldsmobile, Cadillac, and Oakland, into its fold. And in 1910, with GM struggling financially, stockholders blamed the aggressive expansionism and forced Durant out of the company he founded. And in 1911, he launched the Chevrolet Motor Company, named for his partner, the Swiss race car driver Louis Chevrolet. But still the owner of a considerable portion of GM stock, he began to purchase more shares in the company as his profits from Chevrolet allowed. In a final move to regain control, he offered GM stockholders 5 shares of Chevrolet stock for every 1 share of GM stock. And though GM stock prices were exorbitantly high, the market interest in Chevrolet made the 5-for-1 trade irresistible to GM shareholders. And with that sale that concluded on today's date in 1918, Durant regained control of GM. 2 years later, he was pushed out for good by Pierre DuPont, whose family's powerful chemical company had begun investing in the fledgling auto industry by buying GM stock. And Pierre DuPont subsequently rose to the chairmanship of GM's board and became president in 1920. In an agreement made that same year, DuPont paid off all of Durant's debt. In exchange, the controversial founder left the company, refused to bow out of the industry, however, founding Durant Motors in 1929 and produced a line of cars for the next decade. The onset of the Great Depression put an end to his career in cars, and he threw his entrepreneurial energy behind a string of bowling alleys located near the Buick complex in Flint, Michigan. And when this venture failed as well, he faded from the public eye, died in 1947 at the age of 85, just weeks before passing of another automotive pioneer, Henry Ford. But GM bought Chevrolet on today's date, the 2nd of May in 1918. Patrick Mahon is arrested on suspicion of murder after showing up at the Waterloo train station in London to claim his bag. He quickly confessed that the bloody knife and case inside were connected to the death of his mistress, Emily Kay. He then directed the Scotland Yard detectives to a particularly grisly scene in a Sussex bungalow where they found Kay's remains dismembered and hidden among hat boxes, trunks, and biscuit tins. His suspicious wife set off the investigation by asking a friend and former police officer to check out the baggage claim ticket that she had found in his suit earlier. Following his arrest at the train station, he claimed that Kay, who was pregnant with his child, had slipped and struck her head, thus causing her death, and argued that he was only trying to protect his marriage by disposing of the body in the manner in which he did. The medical examiner in charge had no choice but to attempt to reassemble the body in order to find the cause of death. And over the course of several days, he painstakingly pierced her body back together from the remaining assorted parts, missing only her head, and was able to discount his claim that a single fall was responsible for her death, and deduce that Kay had been carved up with a knife that Mahon had purchased prior to the murder. So it was this grisly murder that day made rubber gloves standard equipment at crime scenes in the year 1924 on the 2nd of May. And it was an important investigation innovation that came from this crime scene. The officers who were not outfitted with gloves were forced to pick up the remains with their bare hands. And after the investigation, rubber gloves became standard equipment at murder scenes. Much of the case is bound up in myth and legend. Purportedly, Mahon told a fellow inmate that he was burning Kay's head on the stove when her eyes suddenly popped open. He was executed for murder in September 1924. But it was on the 2nd of May 1924 that this grisly murder makes rubber gloves standard equipment at crime scenes. The modern legend of Loch Ness Monster is born when a sighting makes local news on the 2nd of May, 1933. The newspaper Inverness Courier relates an account of a local couple who claim to have seen an enormous animal rolling and plunging on the surface. The story of the monster, a moniker chosen by the Courier editor, becomes a media phenomenon, with London newspapers sending correspondents to Scotland in a circus offering a £20,000 sterling reward for the capture of this beast. And this legend happened on the 2nd of May, 1933. And there were further sonar expeditions that resulted in more inconclusive readings and revelations that the famous photo that was taken was a complete hoax, has only slightly dampened the enthusiasm of tourists and investigators for the legendary beast of Loch Ness. On the 2nd of May 1945, approximately 1 million German soldiers lay down their arms as the terms of the German unconditional surrender signed at Caserta comes into effect. Early the same day, Russian Marshal Georgy Zhukov accepts the surrender of the German capital, and the Red Army takes 134,000 German soldiers prisoner. Ladies and gentlemen, on the 2nd of May 1949, New York playwright Arthur Miller wins a Pulitzer Prize in drama for Death of a Salesman, the most famous work of his career. He describes the story as the tragedy of a man who gave his life or sold it while pursuing the elusive American dream. The play, which premiered on Broadway 3 months earlier, also won 6 Tony Awards. Half a century later, Death of a Salesman had sold more than 11 million copies, and the New Yorker drama critic John Layer deemed it the most successful modern play ever published. And in his autobiography, Arthur Miller describes how the first act of Death of a Salesman spilled out of him in a single day in the spring of 1948. It sort of unveiled itself. It was a stenographer. I could hear them. I could hear them literally. The play's main character, traveling salesman, sinks ever deeper into depression and delusion as his failures, including frequent absences, financial insolvency, and infidelity, filter down to afflict his sons. And in a society where his neighbors remind him, the only thing you've got in this world is what you can sell, he contemplates suicide as a way to give his family an insurance windfall. The mission of the theater is to raise the consciousness of people to their human possibilities, said Arthur Miller, who died in 2005 at the age of 89. But his Death of a Salesman wins the Pulitzer Prize for drama on the 2nd of May in 1949. Senator Joseph McCarthy of Wisconsin succumbs to illness exacerbated by alcoholism and dies at the age of 48 on today's date. In 1957, he had been a key figure in the anti-communist hysteria popularly known as the Red Scare that engulfed the United States in the years following World War II. And on the 2nd of May 1960, Dick Clark concludes his second day of testimony in the so-called Payola hearings, testimony that both saved and altered the course of his career. And if Alan Freed, the disc jockey who gave rock and roll its name, was Payola's biggest casualty, then Dick Clark was its famous survivor. And that is Dick Clark, who survives the Payola scandal on today's date in the year 1960. On the 2nd of May in 1963 in Birmingham, Alabama, more than 1,000 black school children marched through the city in a demonstration against segregation. The goal of this nonviolent demonstration, which became known as the Children's Crusade and Children's March, was to provoke the city's civic and business leaders to agree to desegregate. Martin Luther King Jr., among the civil rights leaders who organized this protest, said, "We are definitely starting a stepped-up campaign to lay our grievances before the conscience of the community." Police arrested nearly 800 demonstrators, including a 6-year-old girl, mostly for parading without a permit. Teachers shouted encouragement to hymn-singing students as police made arrests, and school buses took those arrested to jail. After meeting with civil leaders, it was Birmingham leaders that eventually agreed to desegregate businesses and free all those who were jailed during the demonstrations. And all this happened with 1,000 school children protesting the segregation in the Children's Crusade on the 2nd of May in 1963. And after nearly 5 decades as director of the FBI, Edgar Hoover dies, leaving the powerful government agency without the administrator who had been largely responsible for its existence and shape. And that was Edgar Hoover, who died in 1972 on the 5th of May. And in 1974, the Maryland Court of Appeals orders the disbarment of former U.S. Vice President Spiro Agnew 7 months after his no-contest plea to a tax evasion charge in the United States District Court in Baltimore. And in a strongly worded 13-page opinion, Maryland's highest court writes that disbarment is an automatic consequence for a lawyer convicted on a charge with moral turpitude unless the lawyer makes compelling exculpatory explanation. Of course, after the case, Agnew wrote a book published in 1980 titled Go Quietly or Else, which defended his political career and criticized the Nixon administration. Agnew became a consultant to foreign business concerns and died of acute leukemia in 1996. But it was on today's date, the 2nd of May 1974, that former Vice President Spiro Agnew was disbarred for tax evasion. Osama bin Laden, the mastermind behind the September 11, 2001 terrorist attacks in the U.S., is killed by U.S. forces during a raid on his compound hideout in Pakistan. The notorious 54-year-old Al-Qaeda terrorist network of Islamic extremists had been the target of a nearly decade-long international manhunt. The raid began around 1 a.m. local time there when 23 U.S. Navy SEALs in 2 Black Hawk helicopters descended on the compound in Abbottabad, a tourist and military center north of Pakistan's capital of Islamabad. One of the helicopters crash-landed in the compound, but no one aboard was hurt. And during the raid, which lasted approximately 40 minutes, 5 people, including Osama bin Laden and one of his adult sons, were killed by U.S. gunfire. No Americans were injured in the assault, and afterwards his body was flown by helicopter to Afghanistan for official identification and then buried at an undisclosed location in the Arabian Sea less than 24 hours after his death, in accordance with Islamic practice. All that happened on the 2nd of May. And those were some of the stories, ladies and gentlemen, that happened on today's date. And we pulled them out of the annals of history for you to make your information more interesting so you can be ready to take on the day today. It is a beautiful Thursday, and it is the 2nd of May. And for those of you who'd like to reach me directly, my number is 214-675-1754. And that's my show for today.